According to Northampton University's study Black is Also British, 80% of teachers have little knowledge of British black history, and the subject is rarely taught in schools. Dan Linden, a secondary history teacher from Henry Compton School in West London, is one teacher trying to combat this.
In terms of the amount of experience and the amount of knowledge that most history teachers have of black history, unfortunately it's still quite limited. Many teachers shy away from it. They say, I don't know anything about it, and therefore they don't tend to teach it. I think that that actually needs to be challenged.
By featuring one of Dan's lessons on the Elizabethans to a Year 8 mixed ability class, we show how you can use a number of active learning techniques to help integrate black history into the curriculum.
Great idea, Bernie.
So, we're going to be working through a piece of work on Elizabeth I and her ideas about poverty. We're also going to look very particularly about the way in which she was working with certain groups of people who were living in this country at that time. I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to spoil the first part of the lesson.
Most people would teach Elizabeth I as part of their Year 8 course, and you should really be able to teach black history within that as part of your normal scheme of work.
And what we're going to look at first of all is this image on the board. This is called the Drake Jewel. Can anyone tell me why do you think it's called the Drake Jewel? Hands up, please. Reese?
Is it because it belonged to Sir Francis Drake?
Sir Francis Drake, absolutely. It belonged to Sir Francis Drake.
I started a lesson with the Drake Jewel as a very engaging image. I immediately drew them to the start of the lesson, and that was my hook.
But the question is really this. Is there anything interesting or unusual about this picture? George?
On the right one, the eagle.
Kamya?
A phoenix.
It's a phoenix. Is there anything else interesting about this piece of jewellery?
There's two characters, and the front one is a black man, possibly, and the back one is a white man.
So we've got a black man in the foreground, and we've got a white man, possibly a white woman, in the background.
Once they had realised that you had this black man on the left-hand side of the jewel, that really opened it up.
Is there anything interesting about the fact that we've got a black man at the time of Elizabeth I?
In a sign of that both countries can work together.
Now, you've hit on a very, very good point there, okay? That this is a sign, maybe, that we've got the black people here, the black community that this represents, working together with Elizabeth and working with Sir Francis Drake. Let's see if we can link that into Elizabethan England. Do we think that there'd be anything unusual about having African people living in England? Abdullah?
I think there were many really racist.
You thought that the black people were?
Like, below them.
Below them.
That really opened it up, and I think we heard from some of the students about why that was so important for them to see this image, and it began to entice them a little bit more into the lesson.
When I thought the lesson was going to be about Queen Elizabeth, I thought, ooh, this is going to be a little bit boring. But when I heard it was going to be about Black History Month, I thought, yes, this is going to be a little bit more interesting. I thought the lesson would be more interesting because I can learn about my friends from different cultures and races.
So, got a couple of sources which we're going to have a look at.
Source A from the National Archives website. Black presence in Britain 1500 to 1850. From the 16th century, the number of Africans and Asians working became increasingly common in England.
Is there anything which surprises you about the source we've just read?
Once we had looked at the Drake Jewel, we then moved on to a Think, Pair, Share activity. And this really gives them a chance to spend a few minutes reflecting on the material that they've read, and then they're going to share it with their neighbours, and that was going to start a little bit of discussion.
When you're by yourself, you can just think quietly and just elaborate on what the topic's about.
If you can't think of any ideas, your neighbours can help you think of some ideas.
Wealthy or not so wealthy people had black slaves.
That's what I was going to say, yeah, same.
I thought there would have been less Asian and African people come to the country. But there was more. I thought they would have came over later, not so early.
Let's see if we can get some kind of discussion going about Anything interesting that you found about that source? Nicholas?
How the Queen had a black maidservant.
Okay, so even our own Queen Elizabeth had a black maid.
Maybe the Queen was waiting for more black people to be popular as servants before she could actually show them off.
What Aaron is saying, I think, is that it was pretty rare to see a black face in England at that time. Sammy, you're nodding.
Yeah, because they were mostly at home doing all the hard work for the people that go out. Because if they went out, they would be mistreated sometimes. So they're mostly inside, yeah, doing their jobs, cleaning the stuff at home.
What I think is important is that we are introducing black history across the curriculum, across all the key stages throughout the year. And it doesn't have to be a standalone. It shouldn't be just a one-off. This should be integrated into your schemes of work, your programme of study, all the way year round.
Drew?
Well, what surprised me was that the Queen had musicians and dancers for her amusement at the court.
Right. So I think what the interesting point which comes out of this source is that at this time it was quite unusual to see too many black faces around. However, we know that there were black musicians, black dancers, black people at the court. So it's suggesting that they were in important positions.
I would say that if you want to start off very simply. You know, start off looking at mainly your Year 8 and your Year 9 schemes of work. They're probably going to be the easiest ways to integrate black history. Look at the internet, look at places like the National Archives website. They've got whole sections dedicated to black history. You can look at the kind of material that's being produced by other teachers, which has already been done for you, and start slowly building it up as you go along.
I'm going to give you about 10 minutes or so to work in pairs, discuss with the person next to you, why did she want them to be sent back? Once you've got your reasons, to rank them in order of importance and explain why you put them in that order.
The black boys weren't up to standard.
They weren't up to standard, so that can be one of the reasons.
They had to choose 2 or 3 reasons and rank them in order of importance. Now that's a higher order thinking skill because they're having to justify why they've made their choices. So again, they're having to think quite carefully about the material, having to process the information.
At that time, they thought white people were better than black people, so they said better 89 white people than better than 89 black people. That's what they thought.
Basically, they were using the black people for a little while, and then they're throwing them away. Yeah.
If there was enough black people, they would get together and they would rebel against the Queen and against England.
The class that I was teaching today was Year 8 class, and most of those people would range probably from high level 4 through to sort of level 6, level 7s in terms of their ability, so quite a big range. The kind of differentiation that goes on in that class, they're going to be involved in a whole different range of activities and try and support as I get around the class as much as I can. One student has Asperger's, so he has a support teacher in there. So we work quite closely together to make sure that he gets all the access to the material that he needs.
Right, George, tell me what you've written down.
She wanted to transport the Blackmores to another country as they were a nuisance because they knew nothing about Christ.
Okay, so she's saying that because they weren't Christians, that they needed to be sent out of the country.
So I think teaching black history is very, very important, not just in inner city schools, not just in London or the big cities, across the whole country. Black history teaches us about inclusion and about respecting ourselves, respecting our joint heritage, and that this is part of our history.
I'm going to give out a little role play. One group is going to have a conversation between Queen Elizabeth and her key advisor. The other group is going to be having a conversation between John Blackmore, an African servant in England, and his friend Simon, and how they feel about being blamed for the problems in England.
I wanted to introduce a role play element into the lesson for a number of reasons. Firstly, a lot of my boys are kinesthetic learners, and this would give them a chance to actually get out and express themselves. Actually a very good way of them developing their empathetic understanding of what was going on.
And then Elizabeth
then you say something. And then you agree, saying that's a very good idea.
Elizabeth says, you are brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. I think I should say, yeah, great. Get him here to me straight away.
Immediately,
Yes, get him here immediately. Burley, I'm worried about the harvest. There have been a lot of problems recently with the lack of rain, and there is not enough wheat and barley being grown. I enjoyed doing the roleplay because it was better than reading out of books every time, and that we got to be in the point of Elizabeth and understand what she was doing. What can we do about this?
Your Majesty, there are a few possibilities to solve this.
Tell me, Burley, what are they?
First of all, we can send the Blackmores back to Africa.
Great idea, Burley.
I'm Simon, and I'm a servant for Lord Burgley. It showed like how black people fought in those days and how they felt. Have you any food for me?
I hardly have enough for myself. There's been a lot of problems recently with the harvest, and there's not enough wheat or barley grown.
But we need food to survive in this cruel country.
And you know what? They're sending us back to Africa, to rot.
What, you lie?
You get to put yourselves into their shoes, like you get to know how they felt in those days. You get to like empathise with them.
Us blacks been working in this damn country for years, and now they want to chuck us out.
And you know what? On top of that, they blame us for all the problems in this damn country. They treat us like dirt.
That was as far as we got.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you.
Most of the things went really well. I was really pleased with the way it went. But I think probably I would have liked to have had a bit more time working on the role play element. I probably would have given them maybe 15, 20 minutes to work on that. And also the plenary at the end, I would have liked to explore a little bit more the kind of comparisons between contemporary attitudes and Elizabethan attitudes to race.
I want you, on your table, to hold up where do you think the statement comes from today, or if it comes from the Elizabethan time. We want our country back. Put your card up whether you think it comes from today or for Elizabethan time. Nearly everyone, the whole class is saying that comes from Elizabethan times. Okay. We'll turn back all asylum seekers. Some are not quite sure. Most people are saying that's from today. 10 black people will be deported. Most people are saying that's from Elizabethan times.
I'm not saying that you necessarily have to spend days, weeks, months of black history throughout the year. What I'm saying is that there should be elements dripped in throughout the curriculum. There's now a huge amount of material available, and there's really no more excuses for not teaching this kind of multicultural, inclusive history.
The first one, we want our country back. That's from the Daily Mail. That was written about a year ago. We turn back all asylum seekers. That was from today. And then finally, 10 black people will be deported. That was from Elizabethan times when they were expelled. Can I thank you very, very much? I think you've been absolutely fantastic today. Brilliant. You deserve a very big round of applause. Give yourself a round of applause, please.
I think it was important to all the students because it shows how white people treated black people in those days, and we don't want to make the same mistakes in these days, so everyone really needed to pay attention to that.
For a copy of Dan's lesson plan and other related resources, please go to www.teachers.tv.